Do you ever find yourself making the same mistakes over and over again, or dwelling on past events or people who've messed you about? I'm going to share with you 3 simple things that can help you learn from your past so you can move into your future. As we look forward to lockdown ending, don't you wish you had Marty and Doc's time machine from the movie Back to the Future, so you knew where and when to book your holiday? Before you fill that empty diary with all the stuff you've missed and all the places you want to be, before we pick up our busy lives where we left off, let's take a journey to our past to see what we can discover that will help us on our way. After all, I am who I am today because of the things that happened to me yesterday, and I can learn from them, but I don't have to be defined by them. And if I want to avoid repeating the same storyline over and over, I need to be willing to learn from my past to understand what has made me the person I am today. Marty and Doc went back to the past as a science experiment. They were curious, but they ended up changing things while they were there. And the present Marty gets back to has changed because something changed in his past. Well, you and I don't have the option of time travel. We are who we are today because of our birth family, our choices, and our experiences, good and bad. The past, including this year of lockdown, has shaped who we are today. We can't escape that. We can't go back and have another go. But whilst we're products of our past, we don't have to be prisoners to it. Our past needn't define who we are going forward. We're going to discover 3 steps that will help us move on from our past. There's an ancient letter written to people in captivity that will help us here. Lockdown has felt a bit like being captive. Isaiah lived in the 8th century BC, and he understood that our past does not need to dictate our future. Inspired by God, he correctly predicted that God's people would be conquered by the Babylonians and taken prisoner. I don't suppose that prediction went down well. But Isaiah also wrote words of hope. After 70 years in exile, God would intervene and his people would be allowed to return home. Isaiah knew his letter would be kept and read in the future when they were captive. How did he encourage people who had suffered a humiliating defeat, people who were stuck in hard circumstances? He wanted to prepare them for an exciting future and stop them going over and over the failures that had led to this point. So what does he say that will help them leave the past behind and move forward? His ancient words are recorded in Isaiah chapter 43, and they're helpful for everyone, whatever we think of the God who inspired them. Forget the things that happened in the past. Do not keep on thinking about them. The people are discouraged. How did they get into this mess? Well, the history of Israel shows them stuck in an endless loop. God rescues them, so they follow and worship him, and they're the best times of joy and celebration. Things go well, but after a while they forget about God. They rebel. They follow other gods. So God allows other nations to conquer them, and this adversity leads them to repentance. They pray for God's help, then God rescues them, and this happens over and over again in their history. They don't learn from their past, so nothing changes. Isaiah's advice to them in their situation is helpful for us today in 2021. And this is the first of our 3 steps that help us move on from our past. Forget the things that happened in the past. Well, we can't forget the past completely, but we can choose not to dwell on it, not allow ourselves to be consumed by the things we can't change, not ruminate on the negative things that have happened. So don't get me wrong, it's helpful for us to understand how our past has shaped us. We can learn from our mistakes. In the movie, Marty realizes from a visit to the past that he overreacts when someone calls him chicken. He learns from this, but he decides to be free of it and chooses not to rise to the bait when it happens again. He avoids a serious accident. He rewrites his future. Learning from our past is helpful, but dwelling on the past will hold us back. Maybe you, like me, find yourself going back over poor decisions you made, or rerunning conversations, mulling over mistakes at work, even small things, or brooding on negative events. Ruminating makes us anxious and can lead to depression. Do you find yourself dwelling on the past? Are your negative thoughts stuck on repeat, replaying those painful scenarios? Well, if you want to move forward, take this ancient advice. Stop thinking about your past. Stop reliving hurtful memories. This pattern may be difficult to break. Find a friend to pray with you if your thoughts are stuck on repeat. Get some divine help. Discouragements and defeats from the past can hold us captive. Freedom comes when we choose to forget the negative stuff and move on to what God has for us in the future. But before we can move forward, there's something else we have to do, and this is step 2. Forgive those who have wronged us in the past. You may have experienced rejection, ridicule, deception, or abuse. If you hold on to those past hurts, they'll fester just like a physical wound. An infection will grow into resentment and bitterness. Are you still holding a grudge or nursing a hurt? How can we stop that infection taking hold in our heart and impacting our future? Forgiveness is the way to disinfect our hurt. Forgiving's not easy, but it has the power to cut the chains of our past that weigh us down. Just like if you clean a physical wound with antiseptic, forgiveness stings for a bit, but then the wound can heal. Forgiving doesn't mean condoning what was done to us. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It doesn't mean you don't take steps to make sure it doesn't happen again, to protect you or someone else. But it does mean letting go of our anger, letting them off our hook, and giving up our desire for revenge. Now, I think forgiveness is easier for people who believe in God, and there are 2 reasons for that. Firstly, if we believe in a God who is powerful and just, a God who gets angry about evil and abuse and injustice, then I can leave justice to Him. That means if I choose to forgive someone, I can trust God to avenge the wrong, to deal with that person fairly. So it's easier for me to let it go. Secondly, if we're a follower of Jesus, we know how it feels to be forgiven. If we've been honest with God about the bad stuff we've said and done and thought over the years, then we've been offered forgiveness with no strings attached. God has let us off the hook. So how can a just God who hates evil do that? Well, God in Jesus took the punishment for our crimes, big and small, when He died voluntarily on the cross in your place and mine. You and I didn't deserve to be forgiven, but we are. If we believe that, then it's easier to forgive others. And it's easier to forgive ourselves. Maybe you still can't believe what you did or said in the past and the hurt you caused, and it's paralyzing you. Forgetting our failures is easier if we forgive ourselves. So if a perfect, holy God can forgive me, then so can I. So step 2 means going back to the past and choosing to forgive those past hurts. And that will change the present. I'll be free from resentment and bitterness. It's a key step to moving on. Forget the things that happened in the past. Do not keep on thinking about them. Isaiah continues with words of hope. I'm about to do something new. It's beginning to happen even now. Don't you see it coming? I'm going to make a way for you to go through the desert. I will make streams of water in the dry and empty land. So what new thing is God doing? He's promising to intervene, to bring them out of captivity in Babylon through hundreds of miles of desert back to Jerusalem and establish them as their own nation again. And historically, God did just that. A new Babylonian ruler released the exiles and even gave them money to help return and rebuild. But in the context of Jewish history, this has the feeling of déjà vu. God rescued them before from Egypt, and now he's rescuing them from Babylon. Israel are still stuck in that endless loop of rejecting God when things are good and crying out to him when things get rough. So will it be different this time? Turns out nothing's changed. It's not long before they behave the same and they rebel again. God's people have a few more loops to go through before God changed tack once and for all. Because these words about doing something new also look forward to God doing something radically new in history and sending Jesus. God in human form. God broke the cycle by sending a saviour, a rescuer, who could deal with the root cause of human imperfection and rebellion once and for all. This rescuer came not just for the Israelites, but for all people, like a stream reaching into the dry and empty places, bringing spiritual life to the desert. And because of Jesus, this something new also has a third meaning, and that's in our lives today. He wants to do something new in you and in me. So our past has a large part in making us who we are today, but it doesn't have to define us. Just as God did something new to free the Israelites and did something new in sending Jesus, he can do something new in you. He can bring places of life and refreshment out of the most barren experiences of our life. This is our third step that helps us move on from the past. Focus on the things you can do and the things you can change. It was Reinhold Niebuhr who prayed, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. The past we leave behind. There's no point dwelling on it. We can't change it. But it takes courage to change something today, to do something new or in a new way. As you look back, you may feel like you're stuck in a loop, struggling with the same old issues, neglecting your health, procrastination, perfectionism, careless spending, a victim mentality, fear, making excuses, relying on alcohol to get you through the day, ignoring God unless you need him. You make your own list. If you're stuck in that loop, focus on the things you can do today, not the mistakes you made yesterday. Give yourself a new narrative. Rewrite the next chapter of your story. Focus on God and allow him to lead you. That may be a new experience for some of us. Does it sound too hard? God intervened in international politics to allow the Israelites to go home. God provided for their needs on their desert journey. Allow him to intervene, to help you change something. With God's help to make better choices, we will experience the freedom that God intended for us. So as we leave lockdown behind, are there things you did pre-COVID that you don't want to go back to? My friend has decided not to have such a hectic social life, to leave more space for family and walks. I'd love to make more space for friends. But unless we're intentional about it, we'll slip back into our old habits, our old routine, our old busyness. We'll be back in that loop. So as you fill up your diary for this summer, have you paused long enough to ask God what he thinks? The 3 steps that help us move on from the past are forgetting the negative stuff, forgiving the hurts, and focusing on the things you can change with God's help. In the movie, the present Marty gets back to has changed because something changed in his past. As you take a moment and look back to your past, what do you need to forget? Who do you need to forgive? And what could you focus on to change? Imagine what life could be like if you were free from the negative effects of the past, free from dwelling on bad memories, free from bitterness and resentment, and free to make better choices. Think what a difference it could make to your relationships, your work life, the atmosphere in your home. Forget the things that happened in the past. Do not keep on thinking about them. I am about to do something new. It's beginning to happen even now. Don't you see it coming? I'm going to make a way for you to go through the desert. I will make streams of water in the dry and empty land.